To those who know me, it's no surprise to them that I absolutely love Resident Evil 4. It's the game that changed my life and pulled me into gaming in general. I've beaten the game hundreds of times across multiple platforms with its many re-releases. To name a few that I have played: PlayStation 2, Wii, Xbox 360, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Oculus VR, PC again, and mobile. So yeah, I kinda really love this game. And I even had a brief period of my life where I speedran it for a while too, so there's that. I know the game chapter by chapter, cutscene to cutscene, room by room, loot spawn locations including ammo and treasures. I even have some of the dialogue memorized.
Bit of advice, try using knives next time. Works better for close encounters.
I know every exploit, every weapon, every upgrade. If you could do it in Resident Evil 4, I have done it. And yes, that includes both the original game and 100%ing the entire remake. Now you could probably understand when the remake was announced, I was so beyond excited for the game. I couldn't wait to see my favorite game of all time get a fresh spin on an experience I've been enjoying for a majority of my entire life. And the remake did not disappoint. Like any recreation of a beloved video game, there's going to be debates. But for me personally, there's something Capcom got so right in this remake, I would be doing a disservice for the game and myself if I didn't point this out. So in the classic Resident Evil 4 game, the two most criticized sections are the water hall and minecart area. Thankfully, during speedruns, we can actually skip the minecart area using an exploit, but during regular playthroughs, this on-the-rails experience is blatantly insufferable. These sections are just not fun. It's a labyrinth of enemies jumping at you from all angles while you are dodging planks of wood and occasionally stopping to battle larger hordes of enemies while trapped in a confined space. Going through the minecart section doesn't fit the pacing of the game, and it brings the free gameplay to a halt for what feels like forever. However, in the remake, Capcom did the unthinkable. They turned this once atrocious area into a fun, cinematic, and exciting experience that I look forward to playing in each and every run. Through excellent design and fun interactivity, the worst part of Resident Evil 4 is now my favorite. So let's start off with how and why exactly this is something I enjoy so much. After all, it's still an on-the-rails section, so how could I possibly enjoy this? Well, it's due to three huge decisions Capcom made for this area: flow, mechanics, and cinematic presentations. I'll be going through these points one by one and hope you see why I appreciate this overhaul so much. First, we'll start with the flow. In the classic Resident Evil 4 minecart area, it's broken down into small journeys throughout the mine shaft solo with Leon, where enemies hop down from scaffolding into one of three minecarts. Your journey will consist of two main battle sections. One section we'll call the fast-paced section, where enemies will hop into your minecart while it's in motion on the tracks, and the other scenario we'll refer to as the trap section, where the minecart comes to a halt due to the Ganado manually triggering a break in the tracks. Much of Resident Evil 4's design stems from player freedom and fast-paced action. You can walk wherever you'd like and adventure at your own pace. So you could probably see how being at the mercy of a minecart ride would be a direct conflict with this design, which I consider to be a direct violation to the flow of the game. While I understand quick time events are littered throughout the game, they do not take much time to pass, excluding the unskippable Krauser knife fight, but for a first time playthrough, this gets a situational pass, as it provides highly important detail towards the overall plot. However, this minecart ride lasts for several minutes, assuming you don't die at all during this journey. A first-time player could easily be stuck in this ride alone for over 10 minutes, assuming a death is involved. An optimal run of the minecart using New Game Plus weapons, shooting all of the enemies off their scaffoldings to get ran over by the minecart, forfeiting all of the awesome loot goodies you'll need on your first game playthrough, while also instantly shooting the track breaks during the trap section the second the frame is available, gives you an approximate 3-minute runtime. This may not seem bad, but remember, in repeat playthroughs, this area is excruciatingly boring. So boring, in fact, 2 possible skips are used in speedruns to dodge this area altogether. Since Resident Evil 4 has been released on several platforms over many years, it plays on different frame rates across systems. For example, the PS2, GameCube, Xbox 360, and PS3 releases run at 30 FPS, while the Xbox One, PS4, and PC modern releases run at 60 FPS. This affects physics and various interactions with the environment, resulting in glitches that may only work on a singular frame rate. For the minecart area, a skip was luckily found on both frame rates that relies solely on the Ditman glitch, which is an exploit where a player quickly aims the striker shotgun, then inventory swaps to another weapon for a massive speed boost that persists until the player takes damage, loads into another area, or switches back to the striker. This results in clipping issues that have been abused across the game to do amazing speedrun skips, which brings us to our minecart skip. At 30 FPS, Leon can simply clip through the floor near the minecart, thus giving the player the ability to glitch out of bounds and sprint through the minecart section with Ditman. But on 60 FPS, this is a much more challenging glitch that takes lots of practice and timing. You will actually need to glitch out of the minecart while it is in motion by jumping over the corner of the cart while it goes around the first turn. Using visual markers such as the wood planks under the enemy scaffoldings and proper timing, you will be able to hop out of the cart and save approximately a minute and a half compared to riding out the sequence while also skipping the end QuickTime event entirely. Now, other than timing and speedruns, the glitch is simply more fun than actually playing this sequence over and over again, mainly due to the fact that while you're out of bounds, you can freely move around like you can in 90% of the game. So that was a lot of speedrun talk, but in short, this sequence is an abrupt halt to the overall flow and free exploration of the game. The speedrun community went through a lot of trouble to find these exploits, and I'm glad they exist. Now let's talk about the mechanics of this section. Each of the 3 minecarts is accessible to the player through button prompts that initiates an animation. Luckily in the original game, oftentimes in animations you'll get God frames, which are brief moments where the animation cannot be disrupted by an enemy. No damage will be dealt to you if they attack, and if you collide with them after the animation is finished, you will stagger them for a brief moment. This creates a bit of opportunity for abuse, but you'll have to be precise in your timing due to enemies being able to attack between carts with melee weapons like scythes, knives, or throwable hatchets. There will also be a total of 2 shootable brake switches along the tracks to put the minecart in motion. The first is directly next to the minecart when you enter to start the section, and the second is located in the trap section to the front left of the minecart after it stops. Additionally, there are several planks of wood scattered across the tracks which can be dodged with QuickTime events, killing the first enemy it comes into contact with, or can quickly be shot to destroy them. If an enemy is first to be hit by the wood, you can disregard the prompt, but if you miss it, Leon will take a fair amount of damage and be staggered to the ground. You'll also need to fight Dr. Salvador not once, but twice, or more commonly known to people as the Chainsaw Guy. Truthfully, I believe the whole reason this area even exists is just for the second Salvador fight, when you battle him and other Ganado while the cart is in motion. This leads to a tense fight where you're constantly balancing eliminating enemies that can chip away at your health while staggering Salvador so he cannot instant kill you with his chainsaw attack. Or you could just skip the whole confrontation if you discover on your first playthrough that you can simply shoot him onto the tracks before the cart gets close to him, instantly killing him, completely defeating the purpose of the area. Of course, on your first time through, you'll want as much resources as possible though, so defeating both Salvadors will result in a 20,000 pesetas profit, 10,000 pesetas each. This is on top of the 20,000 pesetas you got in the previous area in the mines, where you also fought 2 Dr. Salvadors at once in a house. So not taking on this fight could forfeit some much needed cash to get your weapons upgraded at the merchant. As far as mechanics go, this area isn't very innovative. It's just a messy shoot 'em up section with annoying and frequent QTEs and dodge attack prompts due to the close proximity with enemies. I can see how this area would be memorable the first time playing, but this area quickly loses its charm with repeat playthroughs or deaths. Now lastly, before we hop into the remake improvements, let's talk about the cinematic presentation. To be fair, this does feel a bit like an overkill claustrophobic scenario with enemies constantly bombarding you. Unfortunately, I don't feel as if the music does this much justice, just being a bland, unexciting soundtrack. To To be fair, I'm sure this was the best they could do for the time, but the area has just not aged well, and overall, I wish this area was not in the original game, similar to my opinion on Waterhall in the Bulldozer ride. The environments are quite nice though. I do appreciate the uniform aesthetics of the mine area in general. For a game made during the GameCube era, this still is an impressive sequence, but as stated earlier, the washed out colors combined with the unexciting soundtrack really didn't make this area age too well. Now finally, with the original game covered, we can move into the improvements the remake has brought to this section. With Capcom's release of Resident Evil 7 in 2017, the industry was taken by storm with the return of the Resident Evil franchise to its roots, as well as the new RE engine, a successor to Capcom's MT framework engine used on titles such as Dead Rising. Contrary to popular belief, the RE in RE engine does not actually mean Resident Evil, it means Reach for the Moon as signified by its logo. And Reach for the Moon it has for Resident Evil and other Capcom IPs such as Monster Hunter, Devil May Cry, and the upcoming Dragon's Dogma sequel. With this new engine came several remakes of old Resident Evil games, namely 2, 3, and now 4. While true to the original Resident Evil 4 game, some areas were reworked entirely or removed to better fit the pacing and direction of the remake. The minecart area fits into the rework category, and in all honesty, it has become a short, sweet, and exciting action sequence that also manages to fit in some story elements. So let's go back to those core design elements, starting with flow. The remake's minecart area is split into two major ride sections, with a small break in between, where you leave the first minecart, fight off some enemies and get some additional loot, and continue on to the next section. You may notice already based on the gameplay that this section is no longer a solo experience, but a cooperative one with Luis Serra. Luis is a mysterious yet charming character from the original game who had an underwhelming amount of character development. The mine area is completely dedicated to a tag team focus on Leon and Luis, with the minecart ride being the third major area after the Dynamite and Twin Gigante fight. Luis specifically during the minecart ride does not do much except a few one-liners while also reminding you to lean the cart so it doesn't fall off the tracks. The entire area is an on-the-rails experience and almost feels like a universal ride. While this could be a detractor to some, overall I feel as if this sequence becomes a fun break to the overall pacing to the game, putting an emphasis to action over horror and giving it a goofy B-movie twist as we saw in the original Resident Evil 4 formula. Mechanically, similar to the original, the player does not have free control of the destination of the minecart. There is, however, new and unique mechanics that are taught to the player at the beginning of the ride thanks to Luis. There are three major mechanics of this area, the first being the minecart itself. You'll notice it has a health bar, meaning that enemies can now derail or destroy your cart. Then the rest of the mechanics are introduced via dialogue from Luis and on-screen prompts to get you comfortable with the journey to come. The minecart can now grind against the tracks, which can lead to it flipping if you do not tilt in the opposite direction when it rears off course. Lastly, we have track changes, which are circular shootable levers. Leon also gets the opportunity in this area to pack Luis's stylish Mauser C96 pistol, referred to as the Red 9. Now let's jump into the flow and presentation of this, which will combine together for specifically the remake. This entire section is a visual and audio treat. The soundtrack is perfectly paced to the action and there is no dead time. The level feels as if every turn, moment, and action has purpose. Not a single second is wasted, and your attention always has something new to fixate on. There's a mixture of suspense, claustrophobia, tension, and even a bit of humor thrown in. Enemies are not much of a threat if you have decent aim, with archers being thrown your way and the occasional dynamite throwing Ganado. But what I truly appreciate with this section is just the brief break in between railcar rides. After being introduced to the bare mechanics of the railcar in the first section, you then park at a pass-through station. The music returns into this mysterious ambience as you explore and pick up some supplies. Then as you get into the minecart, the bass drops and you're back into the action. This time the stakes much higher than before. You hear the sound of a chainsaw in the background and are quickly met with our potato sack-headed friend, Dr. Salvador. If you get enough headshots, you'll actually stagger him and take him down with relative ease. However, if you do the bare minimum and do not defeat him, you'll be rewarded with a brief and hilarious moment of an awkward stare from him as he leaves this area in the cart. This moment adds that lightheartedness to the whole area, really giving the idea of this being like an amusement park ride. A brief break from the unforgiving, gritty, and tense gameplay as seen in the rest of the game. And to wrap it all up in a bow, the end of our journey brings us to a grand view of the next major game area in the mines, as we're pointed to the origin of the lost Plagas parasite. Then we transition to a cutscene with the iconic Luis Serra humor, and off to the next section in our journey we go. All in all, the remake's rendition of the minecart section was a thorough surprise for how much I loved it. While this may be looked off as rearing off the tonal course of the overall game, it's also a brief reminder of the lightheartedness and B-movie comedy the original Resident Evil 4 had. But unlike the original Resident Evil 4, during each replay I've already done for RE4's remake, I never found myself bored experiencing the minecart sequence to its fullest over and over again, in spite of it still remaining a scripted sequence that will inevitably piss off speedrunners until they find a way to skip past this area. The sequence alone shows me that RE4's remake wasn't some soulish cash grab, but a genuine attempt by fans of this title to improve a near perfect game. Not for just this sequence, but many of the changes done for Resident Evil 4's remake. They've definitely done a great job.